back. Well, in a few days from now, 2,296 Communist Party delegates will converge on Beijing for the 20th National Congress of the party. Unlike similar political conferences in democratic countries, we won't be seeing healthy debate, we won't be seeing speeches of protest or anything vaguely anti the president. In fact, the Congress is highly likely to hand Xi Jinping a third term, making him the longest-serving leader in modern history. It'll have a profound impact on future security in the Indo-Pacific. Joining me now is former DFAT Australia-China Council scholar and businessman, Andrew Phelan. Andrew, good to see you again. If we had a democratic system in China, with what Xi Jinping has been responsible for, and I'm talking about zero COVID policies and immense lockdowns and quarantine, a mortgage crisis the size of the country itself, and unending support for Vladimir Putin, he wouldn't be elected, would he?
Well, I'm not sure you can flick the switch to democracy overnight, Chris. It took Taiwan and South Korea a generation to move from authoritarian leadership to democratic elections. So I'm not sure the Chinese people would be used to the concept. But let's put it this way. In the last year, there's been growing disaffection with Xi Jinping's management, his policies, or his lack of management. And as you pointed out, COVID management's been a disaster. It's created a lot of pushback and real hardship for ordinary people. And then the housing mortgage crisis is a disaster of an epic proportions. We don't really know the size of it, but it's affected thousands of people, who paid for apartments off the plan, and these apartments haven't been finished and they still have to pay their mortgages. Some poor people are moving into these incomplete buildings and setting themselves up in tents with no electricity. So it's a disaster.
Yep.
So yeah, in terms of his report card, probably wouldn't be great.
So the months leading up to a Congress like this is when the decisions are made to reinstall or not reinstall a president. So the decision would have been made by now, do you think?
Yeah, so the Chinese leadership historically gets together on a retreat at Beidaihe, which is on the coast, and has a little swim in the sea and discusses what's going to happen and tries to get some kind of consensus. So whatever's going to happen at the 20th Party Congress, it's political theatre orchestrated to the nth degree. Whatever's going to happen there would have been worked out well in advance in Beidaihe back in August. So we shouldn't expect any surprises. But the significance of this Congress is the fact that Deng Xiaoping, the paramount leader who ushered in opening and reform in the 80s that brought China into the modern world, he also brought in a system whereby the paramount leader had maximum two 5-year terms. So historically, China has always had a great deal of difficulty handing between one emperor to the next and so forth. And Chairman Mao, who ruled from 1949 to 1976, when he died, there was a great big earthquake. So we tend to think of leaders dying or emperors dying and having some catastrophic black swan event and a lot of tension. Deng Xiaoping got rid of all of that, which was a great reform. And Xi Jinping wants to undo that because he wants to stay in power longer.
And tell me if I'm wrong, but this isn't great for Australia because we'll further have to endure this process of being iced from normal trade relations, because that's exactly the policy being used by Xi Jinping to punish us.
Yeah, I don't think it's good for Australia. I don't think it's good for the world. I think Xi Jinping is the most dangerous man in the world, much more so than Putin. Having said that, the Chinese Communist Party is on a mission, and Michael Pillsbury, who was Trump's chief China advisor, wrote a book called The 100-Year Marathon, which talks about the founding of the People's Republic for 100 years to 2049, which is the deadline for China to achieve its aims of being the singular global power. So the mission would continue regardless of Xi. But Xi certainly has had an outsized influence on the direction, the Leninist philosophy, and ordinary people have lost a lot of freedoms, I would say, in the last 10 years. Expats have been leaving in droves, etc. But I also think that he's dangerous because I think he wants to go down in the pantheon of Chinese leaders as the leader who brought Taiwan back into the fold. And so I think that's something we need to worry about over the next 5 years.
It's interesting when you talk about what Xi Jinping has been responsible for. He has introduced this aggressive attitude towards the West. He has stopped his people from accessing social media from around the world, so they can't get access to Twitter. But the irony in all of that is that the people can't get access to Twitter, but the hierarchy can get access to advertising on Twitter around the world.
Yeah, it's funny. Reuters did a little deep dive into Twitter after this whistleblower security guy that testified in front of Congress recently. And Twitter, the platform is, people can't use it in China. But yeah, you're right. Government accounts, local government, publications like the People's Daily and all that, and the diplomats use Twitter like crazy. In fact, it's the fastest growing sales market outside of the US for Twitter. So they want that revenue. But there's also some people, this whistleblower said that there's a MSS, which is their kind of spy agency agent within Twitter. Fei Li, who's on the board, is a computer scientist with close ties to Beijing, and their head of sales, Kathy Chen, in China, has a background with the PLA and researching rockets. So, if Elon Musk goes through with that acquisition, hopefully he'll tidy it up, because I don't think the CCP should be given a platform on Twitter, particularly when the platform is banned in China. It's ridiculous.
Exactly. Andrew Phelan, we'll talk further. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Chris.